So, okay, so good afternoon, everybody, and whether you're joining us for the first time today or you've been with us all along, a very warm welcome to you all, and thank you so much for joining us for this, the fourth in our latest series of BRT UK Lunchtime Masterclasses, supported by Atkins. We have an international flavour to our proceedings today because we are most privileged to have as our guest speaker Helen Rosenkilda Christensen from Stavangar in Norway. And the title that she has taken is Bussveien, the longest BRT scheme in Europe. And it promises to be fascinating. More of that, though, in a minute. I've just, as you know, pressed the record button, so we should be capturing the whole session for people to watch afterwards. Now, please make sure that you are muted, right? This is really important, and please stay muted during the whole session. If you wish to communicate, which we really do hope you will, please use the chat function to pose your questions and comments, which I'll put to Liz in the Q&A session after her presentation. But of course, let me introduce myself. Now, I'm James Freeman, and I'm chair of Bus Rapid Transit UK, which we usually shorten to BRT UK. It's my job to moderate today's session and indeed the whole remaining programme over the coming weeks through to 7th of July. BRT exists to spread knowledge and good practice in the field, not just of BRT, but of high quality bus operations across the board. And that's just what we're doing today again. So we've just an hour this lunchtime on a Thursday and each of the next 3 Thursdays running through to the 7th of July. We'll be done by 1:30. Each session is a simple Zoom run by me. And incidentally, Passenger Transport is our media partner, and you'll have seen last week's talk on intelligent bus priority beautifully written up in today's edition. And we gratefully acknowledge also support for our advertising from Atkins. So it's now my very great pleasure and privilege to introduce our speaker. Helen Rosenkilda Christensen is from Norway, and she works as an architect in the Bussveien unit of the Department of Transport of Rogaland County Council. She has lived in Stavangar since 1982, when she moved there to do her engineering education. Since then, she has worked with area planning, property development, and listed buildings. She undertook her master's degree in urban planning in 2013 at the University of Stavanger. She followed this with a few years as a lecturer in college before she took up a position in the Norwegian Public Roads Administration as an architect. In January 2020, she and her colleagues were transferred to Rogaland County Council. Same jobs, just a new employer, she says. Liz has spent the last 7 years working with transportation and has worked on Bussveien for all of that time. She says, rather modestly, that as an architect, she's not deeply involved in each project. That's not possible, but she has an involvement in all projects. So Liz is therefore brilliantly positioned to give us an expert overview of the Bussveien project for our information and indeed our enjoyment. You'll understand, therefore, that I'm really delighted to welcome Helen Rosenkilda Christensen as today's Lunchtime Masterclass speaker. Now, I have hopefully facilitated screen sharing, but I'm just going to make sure I've done that. And then it is over to you, Liz. And thank you very much indeed for being with us today.
Thank you, James, for the nice introduction. And thank you also for the good advices I got before doing this masterclass. Are you seeing my screen now? Or?
Yes, we have the full screen showing, so that's brilliant.
Okay, great. So today I want to tell a little bit about Bussveien, which is, as far as I know, the longest BRT scheme in Europe. There's a lot I could tell, but I've narrowed it down to what I think may be of interest to you. First, a little bit about our region. Bussveien is situated in Nord-Jæren, on the west coast of Norway, in the county Rogaland. The county is kind of divided into the north and south by a fjord, Buknafjorden, and we are in the south. Another great fjord is Lysefjorden, the one you see in the picture, this one. If you come to Norway, I recommend a visit by boat to the bottom of the fjord.
I think we're all coming, Liz, I should think, by the time you're finished, but anyway, carry on.
Yeah, I hope so. Our region, Jæren, has 44 miles of beaches too, so we have both fjords and beaches, which also are conservation areas, but very popular in the summer, and it's also worth a visit. So that was for the public or the PR for our region. But because of how our region is, so Jæren is a rural region with some of the best agricultural areas in the country. So there is a high dependency of private cars and a lack of good bus services in the countryside. So urban sprawl and high income households means that one can afford to have one and often two cars. So there really are few incentives to make the shift from private cars to public transit. Bussveien has to be something more and of better quality than ordinary bus rides to be able to compete against cars. So a little bit about how the public roads administrations are organized in Norway. We can divide it into 3 tiers. At the top, we have the Norwegian Public Roads Administration, who among other things has the responsibility for the motorways and regulations. Next layer is the county roads, owned and managed by the county council. And then you have the local roads and streets, which are owned and managed by the local authorities. And until the end of 2019, the Public Roads Administration did the planning and building of the county roads for the county council. And from the 1st of January 2020, we were transferred to the county council. It's I repeat, the county council, so I hope you get how it works. And that meant different employer, but the same jobs and functions. So this is quite important for Bussveien. The Norwegian Urban Growth Agreement, the UGA, is a governance platform combining transport infrastructure development with land use and transport policy. It is a response to the Paris Agreement. The intention is to stimulate urban growth in populated areas on Norway, among other areas in Norway, and thus reduce the need for transport by private cars. The agreement ensures that Bussveien and a bicycle highway and motorway project have got the necessary state funding. I'll tell you more about state funding later. An important condition is that 4 municipalities agrees, which they have done. Bussveien, though, only runs through 3 municipalities. So the zero growth goal means that there should be no rise in travels by private cars and a modal shift from cars to public transport, walking and cycling. Separated bus lanes will ensure that buses will not be affected by congestions. This is important when we want the public transport to be trustworthy and precise according to the timetable. Buses will have priority through junctions and roundabouts. In effect, this will be a light rail on rubber tires. So what we have done, we have divided the 50 kilometers into 4 corridors, where corridor 1, which is marked with red on the map, is the most important. It runs between Stavangar and Sandnes, the 2 main cities in Norway. It is along this corridor the urban growth and densification will be most significant. And it is here the focus areas are situated. Yeah. Sorry?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. From the start, it was decided that consultants should do the planning in all projects, but the Public Roads Administration then, and now it is the County Council, is the project manager. So we lay all the guidelines for the consultants. When finished, it will be a 50-kilometer BRT scheme with dedicated and separated bus lanes, as I already has told you. The whole project is split in 26 sub-projects for several reasons. It is run as a portfolio management, which means that it is possible to reduce the total length if it doesn't meet the goals set by the agreement, the UGA. So Bussveien goes through 3 municipalities, Stavangar, Sandnes, and Sola. As you may see here, I've split it into with these black lines. Four of the authorities have to agree on the decisions. One of the municipalities do not have any parts of Bussveien, but they have interests in one of the other projects under the UGA. So I'm sure you appreciate how complicated the project is when we have to collaborate with 3 different authorities and manage 26 different sub-projects and still make it appear as one overall project. There are many opinions and voices, not just the authorities, but also in our own organization. And being a public and very visible project that affects people in general, it's even more complicated. It is no wonder it takes time to plan, because it has taken some considerable years. It's more than 10 years in planning, I think. But to ensure that Bussveien will be seen as one coherent system, we have made a design manual, and this is very important. And we insist that the contractors follow this. We have taken into account, though, that there are places where we will have to adapt to local conditions, which I will show you later. So on the map, you see some green lines, like here and here. These are the first 8 kilometers of the scheme that opened in 2013 and 2015. And you may wonder why in the middle of the whole project, but I think maybe these were the easiest parts of the project. So maybe it's therefore, I don't know. And what you see here in the photo, it's a borough called Hillevåg. And as you see, it has a long and not a very attractive corridor. At least if you're walking, it's quite boring to walk all the way. But the bus ride will be pleasant. At the end here in, well, you can't see it here, but here in the end, it will pass through residential areas where we have fitted new noise barriers. And this has been criticized for creating a barrier or division between the 2 sides, and thus reducing the quality of the area. So one advantage with splitting the project in several parts is that one can learn from mistakes made in the first parts. Here, this illustration, you can see how we are separating the bus lanes from other traffic with central reservations. And along most of the line, there are bicycle lanes. As I told you, that's a very important part of Bussveien as a concept. Yes, so there are a few exceptions due to local conditions when it comes to this cross section. We can't do this all the 50 kilometers. But I'll tell you more about that later. So as a concept, what characterizes Bussveien is first and foremost the separated bus lanes, as I just showed you, priority for buses through junctions, large bus stops, which we call stations, and pleasant bus rides and reliability. But the concept also includes, as I just said, bicycle lanes and better conditions for walking. So that's important too. The county will purchase new BRT buses, which will be recognizable. I'm told that the drivers will get special tuition to ensure pleasant bus rides. The buses will be electrical, but the decision on which buses and technology will be delayed until later due to the fast development in battery and other technology. The bus stops are called stations because they are very different from standard bus stops. A standard station in Bussveien has a 50-meter platform and will hold 2 buses at the same time. The shelters are specially designed, and there will be a pylon with logo. We want the shelters to provide good weather conditions, protection, although one shouldn't need to wait more than 4 minutes for a bus to arrive. And we want the maintenance of the stations to be advertising financed. Here you can see the station with the long platforms, and we have a different color on the pavement. The shelters will not be placed like this. We'll start with one shelter on each platform, and standard length will be 6 meters. And then it will be possible to expand with more modules later. Hopefully there will be more customers later on when it becomes more popular, which I'm sure it will. It is important that every bus station has the same design, so it should be recognizable. We are allowing, though, that the design deviates in the city centers as local authorities wish to integrate the bus stations in the existing or planned area design. There are some plans, especially in Sandnes, to transform the whole center, and they don't want this special, like the special pavement. They want it to be integrated in the pavement they will use in the center. The central reservations are designed as NDS or natural drainage system. This way, nature-based stormwater measures can replace or be a supplement to the sewage system. Another benefit is that the stormwater is led away from the curbs and bicycle lanes, and thus avoiding puddles of water where people walk. It is also cost-saving, and it filters the water before it is released to nature. So standard width for bicycle lanes are 1.8 meters. We originally wanted it to be 2.2 meters, like the Copenhagen style, but we had to take too much of the properties alongside, so it was reduced to 1.8 meters. And new underpasses will be 6.5 and 8.5 meters wide. So that's a huge improvement from the meager 3 meters in existing underpasses. And it's very important that these underpasses are attractive. So we have done some, taken some measures to do that, because, for instance, we have said that all underpasses should have some artwork on the walls, and the lighting should be very much better than they are today. Standard width for the whole cross section is 28.6 meters, but it varies. So there are some places we can't do the full cross section. New noise barriers are fitted, and it's a very difficult topic because there's so many opinions, and we have to balance aesthetics, cost, quality, and what the homeowners want. So actually, this topic could fill a masterclass in itself. So here I want to show you the largest underpass in Bussveien. We call this the X junction because of the 4 roads meeting here. And the area surrounding the junction are old industrial properties, a gas station, and office buildings. These areas will be transformed and filled with offices, apartments, and probably shops. The property owners and the developers on each corner are thrilled with the idea of Bussveien. They understand what it means for the area and for the property value. So in this picture, you see how the underpass works. It's actually around 300 square meters. And if you notice on the outside here, the walls outside are made as sheet pile walls. So this is, the whole Bussveien is a pilot project, and this certainly is a pilot thing, because we haven't done walls without covering the sheet piles before. And now we are exposing them. So, but the local authorities liked it and they accepted it. So We'll see what the public means later when it opens. I like it actually. So we have some challenges. As you can see, the roads are very straight, which I already told you, and this is to ensure the pleasant ride. But the consequence is that we have to purchase properties and bits of people's gardens. And for those who lose some of the gardens, we offer upgrading of their gardens. But it is not always pleasant for people to give up their home and move somewhere else. We are paying market price, but still it is difficult. We need to see the human side of it. And there is also the infrastructure in the ground that sometimes have to be moved or replaced, and that is very costly, but it is necessary. So here you can see how these constructions will affect some properties, but we have upgraded. So this is quite a bit of upgrading of some of the gardens. I think it's lovely, but then you have the walls. So I hope it balances. So here is one example of how we have to adapt to local conditions. Some areas are important conservation areas or collection of listed buildings. In Sandnes, which you see here, Bussveien are passing through one such area where we have to compromise between the need for cross-section width and what the local heritage administration allows us to do. So in the area you can see on the map, we are moving the blue houses or buildings further east. So we are actually widening out the road by moving quite a bit, quite some houses. And the small red lines, that is where we cut the houses. And the big red building in the bottom, that is one building that has to be demolished, and not just for our sake, but also because there's going to be a park there, a green park. And in all this, we have this strict budget regime, and to keep it in the budget, we have to look for ways to do things cost effectively, but without compromising quality. But in this case, as you see, it's quite rundown area, or maybe you not see it, but it is, with a lot of traffic. I can't remember how much traffic it is, but we are closing this road, so it will be, and we are upgrading these houses, both because we are moving them, and then we are going to insulate them against noise. So it will in total be quite a huge upgrade. So to the financing. This one is a very expensive project. In total, it will be £1.44 billion. It wouldn't be possible to go ahead with this project without 66% government funding. And the rest is financed with road tolls and loans. A few years ago, there was a social movement against road tolls, and this has had an influence on the ongoing discussions and popularity of Bussveien. The most expensive project in Q1 would cost around £100 million. And that includes a new bridge over the railway lines and an underpass for regular traffic. And there will be 2 bus stations on top of the underpass, as you might see in the picture here. Yeah, the underpass is for the traffic. But the consequence for the straight lanes for a pleasant ride and separate bus lanes is that the houses need to be purchased and demolished, and we have to pay market price. And that amounts to around 40% of total cost. We have some challenges. The budget cannot be exceeded. The Ukraine war and the rise in electricity costs has had a negative effect on material prices. Steel, concrete, and other materials are a lot more expensive now compared to the estimates we did 6 months ago. So we are looking for ways to cut costs, but preferably without cutting quality. This is not very easy. Because one of the premises has always been high quality, and this is the time to get creative. Traditional planning methods take time and cost a lot, and new methods are emerging, but the need for a change in work culture is not always obvious for those who can instigate a change. We are collaborating with local authorities, but there is definitely a potential for optimization. Local authorities do not quite trust us because of the history of the Public Roads Administration. They were known to bulldoze through areas when building roads. And to convince the authorities otherwise is not an easy task, but we are getting there. So, lessons to learn. And I have to emphasize that this is my personal opinion. Other people in the projects may have other opinions. I think that we need to think differently in regards to the planning methods and we are currently using and how we collaborate. In Bussveien, we are collaborating with the local authorities, but we have not formed working teams. It is still us and them to a degree. We need to be on the same side and agree on the same goals. And I think it's very important to spend a lot of time forming good teams before we start the planning process. Get to know each other and socialize. I think that time spent in the beginning will be time saving later in the process. This is a huge project, and some of the very costly constructions we are currently building may not have been planned like this today. There should be an acceptance for changes even late in the project. Underpasses, for instance, cost a lot, and with the underpasses, in our cases, comes high concrete walls or other kind of walls. We may not have done it like this if we were to start planning today. And then I think a good plan for communicating the project to the public is important. This is not a popular project as it affects traffic when building, and taxpayers are not happy to see their money spent on something they really do not want. So I think it would pay off to be prepared for the negative comments and uptalk the project as often as possible. But the good thing is that we have several neighborhood liaisons who keep informing those affected by the construction sites on a regular basis. And the neighbors have one person they can contact if they have any questions. And that has been a success. It's a bit easier for them to not have to contact somebody and not knowing to know who they should contact. So I think to ease the problems for the property owners alongside, I think neighborhood liaisons has been very good. So this is what I was thinking of presenting today. As I said in the beginning, I think there's a lot more that could be said. I didn't say anything about politics today. That's actually a masterclass in itself because there are so many things there. So I hope it has been interesting, and thank you.
Well, it certainly has been, and thank you very much indeed. And Liz has kept to the timetable absolutely, which is a delight from my point of view, I must say. And okay, we already have some points in the chat which will drive our conversation now. And thank you very much to those of you who already put things in there, and please carry on doing so. The first question is from Andrew Braddock, and he is, I have to say, he is one of Britain's leading opinions on tramways, as the LRTA's, I don't know what he is, but he's very important in the LRTA. And so he's asked the following question. If this is a project born of the climate emergency, why is it based on heavy rubber-tired vehicles now that the evidence, as he says, shows particulate emissions from tire and road surface wear is deadlier than the emissions from vehicle exhausts? Are Stavangar's politicians, he asks, falling into the trap of believing that buses are cheaper when after 30 or more years they won't be? So I suppose that the real question that's coming in there is, how was the decision made to go for BRT and not a tramway arrived at, Liz?
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's a long history. And that is, it started actually with light rail or light tram. If you are familiar with B-Bahn in Bergen, we started with thinking of having something of the same because that has been very popular. And I don't know where to begin actually, but it has evolved, and I think it's they set up an office for planning light tram, and then it got a bit. It wasn't very successful of different reasons, and then it got more political than it actually should have been. So it's I don't know what to say. I think it's a huge question.
And how long since you've been involved with it, has it always been a BRT? Has it always been a?
No, it hasn't. I wasn't involved when they were talking about having a light tram. I know a little bit about the history, but not all. But I know that the office who was doing the planning, there was something that happened there that wasn't very good. Then they shut down the office, and I think maybe it's correct, as he said, that the politicians fall into the trap of thinking it is cheaper, because it is. But I think that you never hear about those kind of emissions, like the rubber tires and all the problems. That's something that I find personally is lacking in the discussions. So it may be yeah.
So I think this is a huge topic in actual fact, and in a sense we could spend the rest of, and maybe there should be a series on BRT versus LRT. I've always tried to steer away from that. What I like to see here is the investment in public transport, and not just getting into a us versus them sort of debate about it. Because a great deal of what you've been explaining to us today would be common to whichever system, frankly. Because a lot of what you've been talking about is the provision of the priority routes and the design of the areas and all that. The amount of money you're spending on property acquisition and so on points in that direction. So Andrew, I'm going to leave that topic, fascinating as it is, and move on. Ben George from Transport for Wales asks, have there been particular political challenges? I mean, I think you've said, Liz, that there have been at the regional and local level that you've had to overcome. Has there been anything particular that catches your eye?
Yeah, there have been. The agreement has to. They have to agree. The four authorities, but there are some other projects. It's not just Bussveien. There are also some motorway projects, and there is a bit. The authorities don't quite agree on what is most important. Of course, Sandnes, which is most car dependent, because they have more urban sprawl and more agricultural areas. They are more. They like the motorway project, and but Stavangar, which is more urban, they are more for the Bussveien. So there are discussions, but they still agree. So it has something to do with how the agreement are set up according to the finance, because there are some reward money too. If we can succeed with this project, there are some reward money. So there are lots of things that affect this, but there are discussions. Yeah.
But I mean, the key feature is that it enjoys broad political support. Otherwise, you couldn't do it.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah.
Well, I think it is a bit amazing, really, isn't it? So right, on we go. Let's look at what's next. Let me see if I can find it first of all. Oh, hang on a minute. Right, bear with me a second. A little moment. Right, okay. Peter Shelley, who is involved in rapid transit in the south of England, in the Portsmouth area, asks, fascinating project. How did you get public support for taking away people's front gardens or part of them and giving over road space to buses? These are things which are often a huge challenge in the UK. So how did you get people to agree to that? So there's
Well, there are a few who don't agree, of course, but the thing is that we are offering some upgrades of the gardens, and they actually like the noise barriers, because then it will be, you know, normally you see their garden, but now you get these noise barriers, and they like it, actually, the property owners. I don't know. I think maybe there are some negative voices, but I think lots of people are actually positive to this project. So
that's really interesting.
And we pay market price for what we are.
Yeah. So that's quite interesting. But and you can see that from the expense of all this relocation. More than half the cost of the project. That's a massive number, isn't it?
Well, it's 40%.
Yes, I mean, what's interesting is that in your presentation, you did rather feature the importance of the liaison and the PR side, and it seems to me that that's a very interesting lesson from your project that we can all take account of. So spending money and time and effort on talking to people, is that right?
Yeah, I think so. I think there is a smaller project in Trondheim, and they have done, I think their communication strategy is a bit different, and I think that's been quite successful, but then their project isn't that big as ours. They are just 8 kilometers or something like that. So it's a bit different, but I think because this is a project for the future, and I think it's very necessary. And it's very important that people are positive to it, because when we are developing this these stretches, like and the densification and everything, they can't have one car for each household. So yeah, I think to communicate this in a positive way is very important.
Yep. I'm sure you're right. Okay, Dr. Barrett, as inevitable with these sorts of comments, Dave Perry has made the comment, thinking of the picture you showed us of the huge underpass. Exposed sheet piles are excellent media for public art. And I must say that occurred to me also, Liz. That huge space, I mean, there are all kinds of ways in which that might be usable. What's open there?
Yeah, so but I had an idea, and well, we'll see if it works. But I thought, why not use it as a public art gallery? So we have some the walls. There are wood. We are cladding the walls with wood, with piles of wood, and then we have some boards in between. So I thought, why not use these boards to display art and like an art gallery? So we can use it for that. But Stavangar Kommune, who this is in Stavangar, they had some ideas for how to use it, and it was more like the same for public performance or whatever.
Yes.
So I think it can be used for different things. And I hope it will evolve, that people find or come up with some good ideas for how to use it.
I mean, it's interesting that you commented on the fact that all the subways would be bigger and wider than normal to try and make them less. One of the problems in the UK is that these areas become very unpleasant.
Yeah.
To walk through, and not even just unpleasant, but also dangerous on occasions. So that might be a comment on UK, of course, but nonetheless, right. Interesting question of detail, which probably you can't answer, but is worth asking all the same. John Remington says, do you plan audible warnings for vehicles leaving stops where a pedestrian's visibility is blocked by another vehicle? This is where vehicles come along behind, and another question, which is leads to a bigger question, which is do you intend to allow people to use scooters and bring them on the vehicles? And indeed, have you come across e-scooters? They're a big thing in certain UK minds, and how they fit in with your walking, cycling, and so on strategy. But first of all, I'm guessing that the first part of the question is a bit detailed for where we are at the minute.
Yeah, that is, we have this the division in or department in the county, the Columbus, which is the one who do all the things, all the electronic parts, and so I can't, I don't know what they're doing, but I think they're looking at things all the time. So they're constantly looking for new,
just an extra point that arises. Of course, the map you showed us with the green bits on, which are already operational, they are being exploited by buses today. Yes, I mean, if I went out now, that you would see buses going up and down there, and that's one of the beauties of this scheme, isn't it? That you can use an existing vehicle. Just as they're doing in Sprint, we heard about that 2 weeks ago. You can use the infrastructure that you've built and put into place straight away, even though the whole system is not complete. That's one of the great advantages of BRT. So presumably some of the more exciting elements of the vehicle, the end game vehicles, maybe not yet even have been thought about in terms of how they're going to work. What about these e-scooters then? Are they all around in Norway already?
Oh, all around. Actually, I've seen there are more of this. I went to London some weeks ago, and I haven't seen as many as we have here. We see them all over, and now we have actually got a new regulations for e-scooters. If we are going to allow them on buses, I don't know. I suppose there will be the new buses when they are purchased. They will be larger, and maybe I don't know if they will allow it, but maybe there will be room for it. But I can't. I don't know by now.
I think you're allowed not to know the answer to that. But the next question, what's the target for completing the whole project, Liz?
Well, it was in the beginning 2020, then it was 21, and then it was 23. Now it is for the corridor 1, it's 26. So we think it will not be before 2030, maybe.
Yes.
So it's
so that's the issue with this, isn't it? And looking at your back to your map with its red and green and blue bits and a bit of amber bit, I think, as well. And that displays how this will roll out over a lengthy period. Yes.
Yes. So that's why it's split into corridors, so we can concentrate on the corridor at a time.
Yes.
But, and because there are some discussions, because it's portfolio management, so we may drop some of the small sub projects, maybe. So we don't.
That's interesting. So at what point, Liz, will you get to the point where you say this is now not just a series of Bussveien projects, but a real Bussveien thing from beginning to? What's the moment at which you say, yeah, we've done it now? It's, we've sort of got the system.
Well, the first goal is the corridor 1. When we have got corridor 1, then we will also have the buses and the new shelters, because now we are putting up some shelters which will be replaced. And then it's, I think we can't say it's, well, we can't say it's finished, but it's a very important stretch that is finished in 2026.
Yeah, is this when you can start talking about it as a system rather than a series of bits? Yes,
yeah, I think so.
That seems to be very important. That's good. Thank you very much indeed. As a matter of information, is there a need for under roadway heating in Stavanger? Is that something you do in Norway?
Not in Stavanger that as much. Well, it would have been good, of course, but we haven't got that many days with weather conditions like we need that. But we did discuss it in the beginning. But that was one of the things that we didn't bring on further on in planning. So both because of the cost and also because we thought it wasn't that needed.
Yeah, good. Okay, thank you. Now, as is the way with these things, we're switching topic completely. What about patronage and modal share? Let's think about modal share first. Is there somewhere a modal share ambition, a target for what you're trying to do with Bussveien? What would be, is there a figure for that?
Ooh, that's I don't know if I can answer that. We have again, we have this mobility department who may be the ones you should ask. So that question I have to ask somebody else then.
Yes, because presumably the whole purpose of this is to change the modal share for public transport, to build the modal share. And I suppose what people would be interested in is what the modal share is now for public transport. I suppose in some of those municipalities, quite a lot different from each other. Would that be right?
Yeah. So in Sandnes, there are, I don't know the figures, but I know that it's very much car dependent. I think maybe that we have around 5% bus traveling, and they are trying to increase it to 8%, which is very low. It should be a lot more.
Yeah.
So, but that I'm not quite sure, but I think that's the figures by now. Right. Yeah.
Yes, and I suppose by the same token, the detailed question is around, well, some Matt here is asking, can you tell us to the nearest million how many passengers are forecast to use the system? But I'm sure you can't tell us that, but or even more detail. No, but presumably somewhere those ambitions are written down. Would that be right?
Yeah, I think they are. Stavanger has a very huge ambition on how to reduce emissions, like 8% within 2030, and that means that a lot of the travelings will be by bus or cycling or walking. But that's the only figures I know right now. So there are some things I can't answer correctly, so I can, but I could redirect the questions. If anybody is interested, I will be happy to direct to somebody else.
It's quite interesting because I noticed that the person who asked one of those questions is Rob Jack, who is obviously writing this up, and he will be interested in in some of those figures for sure.
Yeah.
And obviously that's outside your scope, but it's clearly a vital part of what this is about, which is you know, such an exciting and ambitious scheme as this is targeted at improving modal share. No for public transport. No two ways about that, is there? That's interesting. Now, is there anyone else who would like to ask something? What about you've been talking, Liz, about how people are sort of pulled across into this marvelous new system by attractive everything. What about the pushing side of things, i.e. increasing parking charges for people and making it more expensive to drive, all that sort of thing? What's the background in that area?
Yeah, we used to have like congestion toll. We had to remove it because of the social uproar. So, but the most important thing for the modal shift, I think, is the parking spaces. And we have a report that says that if you reduce the parking spaces, and especially in new areas, but also in the centers, that will have the most effect. So the new areas and the densification that is has been planned or is being planned. There will be a lot less parking spaces for the apartments and also for the businesses. Right,
that's interesting. So thank you, Liz. I'm just looking at the chats, and Ben George at TFW has written what I would want to say, which is thank you for your generosity and honesty in sharing this project with us. And I think that's a very nice way of putting it, actually. It is, you know, it's one thing to do these things, but to tell other people about them, it's quite, you know, you have to think, well, what can I tell them? And I'm delighted Liz has been so open with us about this, so we're very, very grateful for that. So that brings an end. It's 1:26 to the question and answer session. So I'm going to conclude now and repeating a huge thank you to Liz for doing something that I would never dare to do, which is to make a presentation in a foreign language and to answer questions about it. You can write a script for the presentation, but you can't write a script for the answers. So we really, really appreciate.
I'm just sorry that I didn't have all the numbers.
Oh, well, that's fine. And if we have a specific question, we might come back to you on that, Liz, if that's all right. But we are so grateful to you for sharing your knowledge and experience. And it has been a most informative and interesting session today. Thanks as ever to you, also our audience, for your interest and for your comments and questions. Don't forget that the program has been recorded and will in due course be uploaded to YouTube. I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank our media partners, Rob Jack and Andrew Garnett at Passenger Transport, who are reporting on these sessions as they unfold. And also many thanks, as I say each week, to Ray Stenning at Best Impressions for producing our super advert, and to our friends at Atkins for supporting the whole thing. I should also mention my colleagues, Patrick Warner and John Carr at BRTuk, as well as the other board members, both on and off this call today, who've been working to ensure the success of this program of Lunchtime Masterclasses supported by Atkins. So please watch the next edition of Passenger Transport out a fortnight today to see a write-up of today's event. As I mentioned earlier, the sessions are being recorded. This has been recorded today, and I will this afternoon upload this one to YouTube. And if you want a copy of this one or the previous editions, any one or all three of them, simply email events@brtuk.com and I'll send you what you need. Similarly, Liz has kindly agreed to provide a PDF copy of the slides. So if you want those, by all means, also request them by the same means. So we carry on our series next week, and in doing so have a bit of a change of tack, because on Thursday, 23rd of June, that's a week today, in the 5th of these 7 lunchtime masterclasses supported by Atkins, we have TfL's Director of Innovation, Thomas Abelman, who will present on why innovation. I think that should be a very interesting session. So remember, these BRT masterclasses are on every week until July the 7th. Use the same link each time on Zoom to access the sessions. Do join us at 12:30 in a week's time using that same Zoom link. So with a huge thank you again, therefore, to Helen Rosenkilda Christensen, all the way from Norway, and indeed to all of you, our audience. This is James Freeman signing off for BRT UK until a week today, Thursday, 23rd of June at 12:30. So thank you very much, everybody, and very goodbye to you. So cheers. Right.
Thanks all.